Alright, we're going to talk about changing strings. Actually, we're going to talk about installing strings rather than changing strings. There's lots of videos on this. Obviously, I just feel the need to make my own video about this. I'm doing this, of course, from a repairman's viewpoint rather than, well, that's not true. This is how I string all my guitars. But I will say that if you have a repairman, a guitar repairman, he's going to appreciate it if you string your guitars this way. So, the way I like to do it. So, on this little ridge right here, the first thing I do with a brand new string is give the string a little bend right here like this. So that this edge is going to go on the bridge. Okay? This edge right here is going to go on the bridge. And this is a smooth, continuous line right here. As opposed to if you did it the other way, like this, you can see, and this is a sacrifice string. I'm going to get rid of it. You can see that you got now this hump right here. And what will happen is this will sit up here. You'll have an air gap right here where this crosses the bridge. I don't like that. I've seen that cause buzzes. I don't like having the string suspended off the bridge like that. I feel like you lose a little bit of tone, etc. So the first thing I do with a string is to give it just a little bend like this so that I can ensure, number one, that this has got a little twist in it, and this is going to be the smooth side that goes on the bridge. Okay? All right. Put your ball end right up there at the top. Take your pin. If it's a slotted, non-slotted bridge, you're going to put your slot up forward facing. Push the pin in while putting a little bit of tension on it. And it'll stop right there. Push it in. Pull up on that. Go ahead and pull up. If your pin slides up, I got that one in nice. If you ever see your pins pull up like this, then what's happened is you put the string in all the way, you put it like this, and the pressure from that will cause that pin to pop up. And you don't want that. This bridge is slotted, so this pin goes in backwards, like this, because these are special pins. Otherwise, I would use a non-slotted pin to begin with. Put the ball in about right there. Push to pull up on it. It's not going anywhere. Okay? That's done. I tend to do all 6 of them, which I'm not going to do to make this video shorter. I do all 6 of them, and then I come up to the peg head. So let's go up to the peg. Okay, up here at the peg head, there are several ways to make this happen right here. My favorite way, let's just deal with that first. My favorite way, pop it in, bring it up, get yourself just enough slack right here that you can flip this over the top. Okay, let me do that again for you. Bring it in here. I've got some slack back here. I've got just enough slack. I can flip that over the top, bend that string up, and then start winding. And what's going to happen here, you've got 1 wrap on top. You've got at least 1 on the bottom. You could do 2. I don't like to have any more than 2. This is all you need right here. This string has just a little bit of tension on it. Watch what happens to these 2 coils as I pull on the string and give it some tension, okay? There, did you see that? They tightened in on each other. They go like this. Where's my hand right here? They pull in on each other. They pull in on each other and they pinch that right there and they lock that down. That, to me, is the best wrap in the world. And the reason is, it's so easy to take up. Okay? Another wrap goes like this. And see, it's already harder to do. The other wrap would just go underneath it like this, and you wrap it. Then you put a couple of wraps on it, and there you go. Okay? Now that's okay. But what happens here is you don't have that string wrap on top. You don't have that wrap on top pulling it down, and you lose the pinching motion. Instead, what happens is these wraps have to push the string up to the top of the hole, which they don't always do. If this was on the treble strings, I could pull that hard enough to pop it out. That's okay, you know. That's okay. I would rather see this than the next one. So that would be 2 wraps under right there. That's not bad. This lets you get an increased pressure on the headstock, which is a big deal. But you could get that too if you just put more wraps on like if you did it like this. You know, if you think that's a big deal, more wraps underneath, then you can still do it here. You just give yourself a little bit more string. Flip it over the top. Bring it underneath. The string's getting bent. You can do that. And you can still put more wraps underneath. But again, watch what happens here as I pull on this. It tightens that coil down. So that's why I like this method so well, because those two come together and pinch that string, and then you take your pliers and cut it. And you don't have to cut it down here, you don't have to cut it right here. It's not going to move. Come down here and just cut it close so you don't poke yourself in the eyeball with it. Which I actually did one time. I used to leave my strings hanging out like this because I thought it looked cool. And I went to look at something and I poked the string right straight in my eyeball. Had contacts on. Okay, here's the method that I really don't like. And a lot of people swear by this, but as a repairman, I hate this method. Let's get all this straightened out here. It's the lock and loop method. And you go around here, you pull this under, and you lock it like this. You bring it around like this. Now, that locks itself right here, and that's not going to move. That's a very strong, secure method. There's no question. But it's not, in my experience, any stronger than simply using the one over and one under method. And here's what I hate about this is when your repairman gets this and it comes time to change your strings, you got to come over here like this, and then you have to unlock this thing like this. And that's not a big deal with this big fat bass string like this, but when you're dealing with the treble strings and they're tight, it can be a real pain in the rear end. Sometimes I have had to come in with pliers and untwist all this stuff and do it. And I don't like working with pliers on your headstock. So I really dislike that method. Bring it up to pitch a little bit. Then reach over here, pull the string up at the bridge, and what you do is you pull the string tight against the bridge plate that way, and then take your hand here and push it down. And what that does is pulls the tension this way, tightens it around the peg head. You don't really stretch strings. That's a common saying. I think it's a misconception, because if you stretch this wire, you're going to actually make it thinner, and it's not going to hold tune then, because you cannot stretch a string evenly. You'll end up with thinner spots and thicker spots, and your string won't stay in tune. So when people say stretch the strings, what they're really talking about is it's taking up the slack at the headstock here. And that's where your tuning thing comes in. I guarantee you that doing this, that string will stay in tune forever. I will tune it to a low E right now, and it will be tuned to a low E first thing in the morning too, unless I will tune it to a low E now, and it'll be in tune tomorrow, next day, unless the humidity goes up and down a lot and causes the top and everything else to move. But if you do that to your strings and tighten them against the headstock, against the tuning against the tuning peg, they'll stay in tune forever. And the beauty of this over and under is, again, it locks itself in. So you pull the string up here a little bit, and then you push it down here. Okay? That pulls it up against the bridge plate. That motion there pulls it this way up against the tuning peg, and you're done. Okay? That's how I change strings. That makes me so happy when I get a customer's guitar in and they've done it like this. And that's such a neat winding. It doesn't have this knot tied in the headstock that's hard for me to get off. And the worst thing is when they go back through the hole again, it's like, golly, there's worse things in the world than having a string slip. You don't have to tie them in knots in the headstock. And once again, that's how I do it on my mandolin. The mandolin is under more tension than the guitar. The thinner strings, if you were ever going to have a problem with strings like that, you would have it on a mandolin. And I don't. I do my electric guitars that way. If they have that kind of tuner, most of them, are the drop-in Clusons. But that's all you need. Electrics are a little bit different though, because you're doing if you do the whammy bar, the dive bomb business, you actually are loosening, you loosen the strings up. And I can totally see locking tuners or locking nuts, that kind of thing, if you do a lot of tremolo bar, dive bombing. Okay, I'm stringing this guitar for real, so I'm getting this nice and clean here.